When a farmer discovers mysterious ancient seeds hidden in his grandfather's journal, he decides to plant them despite warnings about their unknown origin. But as the strange plants begin to emerge, he witnesses something so extraordinary that it changes his life forever. Farmer Marcus stood frozen in his dusty attic, hands trembling as he held his grandfather's leather-bound journal. The morning light filtering through the small window illuminated swirling dust particles around him, creating an almost ethereal atmosphere in the cramped space. Between the yellowed pages lay several small, iridescent seeds unlike anything he'd ever seen before. They seemed to pulse with an inner light, their surfaces shifting between deep purple and emerald green when caught in the sunbeam. The journal's last entry, dated 1947, contained a cryptic warning that made Marcus's blood run cold. These seeds must never touch soil again. What we witnessed in the southern field that summer must remain buried in the past. May God forgive me for not destroying them when I had the chance. The handwriting was shaky, unlike his grandfather's usually steady penmanship, suggesting he'd written it in a state of distress. Marcus studied the seeds' unusual metallic sheen, turning them over carefully in his palm. They were remarkably lightweight, almost as if they were hollow and perfectly preserved despite being hidden away for over 75 years. He wondered whether they could still be viable after all this time, and more importantly, what kind of plants they might produce. His grandfather had been known throughout the county as an innovative farmer, always experimenting with new cultivation techniques and unusual crops. But something about these seeds had frightened him enough to hide them away and never speak of them to anyone, not even to Marcus's father, who had inherited the farm and worked the land until his passing last spring. The timing of this discovery couldn't have been more crucial. Marcus's farm was struggling to stay afloat in the face of mounting debts and increasing competition from large agricultural corporations. The traditional crops he grew barely covered the operating costs, and the bank was threatening to foreclose on the property that had been in his family for 4 generations. He desperately needed something, anything, to turn his fortune around. As Marcus sat cross-legged on the dusty attic floor, he carefully read through the journal's earlier entries. His grandfather described receiving the seeds from a mysterious traveling botanist who claimed to have discovered them during an expedition to an uncharted valley in the Himalayas. The entries that followed detailed careful preparations for planting, including precise calculations for soil composition and lunar cycle timing. But then the entries abruptly stopped, only to resume months later with that final haunting warning. The sensible thing would be to heed his grandfather's words and destroy the seeds. Yet something about them called to Marcus, almost like a whispered promise of possibility. His scientific mind argued that whatever had spooked his grandfather in 1947 might have been nothing more than superstition or a simple crop failure. Modern farming techniques and technology could potentially prevent whatever had gone wrong back then. After a sleepless night of deliberation, Marcus made his choice. He would plant the seeds, but he would do so carefully and methodically. The old greenhouse behind the barn, long abandoned and hidden from view by overgrown vegetation, would be the perfect place to conduct his experiment. He could control all the variables there and monitor the growth process closely without drawing attention from his neighbors. Early the next morning, Marcus began cleaning out the greenhouse. He replaced broken glass panes, repaired the irrigation system, and prepared special growing containers with pristine soil. As he worked, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. Though the greenhouse was far from any road or neighboring property, the seeds seemed to grow warmer in his pocket, as if responding to their proximity to soil. Just as the sun began to set, Marcus carefully planted each seed in its own container, making detailed notes about depth, soil temperature, and placement. He set up a small weather station to monitor conditions and installed security cameras to track any changes when he wasn't present. Whatever these seeds might become, he was determined to document everything. As he locked up the greenhouse that evening, Marcus noticed something odd. The security camera's display showed a faint, pulsing glow emanating from the soil where he'd planted the seeds. He checked the containers personally, but could see nothing unusual with his naked eye. Must be some kind of interference with the camera, he thought, trying to ignore the way the hair on the back of his neck stood up. Walking back to his farmhouse under a sky full of stars, Marcus couldn't help but wonder, had he just made the discovery that would save his family's farm? Or had he unleashed something that should have remained hidden in the pages of his grandfather's journal? Marcus's family farm, nestled in the rolling hills of Vermont's northeast kingdom, had once been the pride of Washington County. The sprawling 200-acre property, with its distinctive red barn and historic farmhouse dating back to 1886, had survived the Great Depression, 2 world wars, and countless economic downturns. But now, in 2025, it was barely holding on. His grandfather, Theodore Richardson, had been a pioneer in organic farming long before it became trendy. The farm's reputation for quality produce had drawn customers from as far as Boston and New York City. Old photographs hanging in the farmhouse showed crowds of people at harvest festivals, Theodore standing proud among prize-winning vegetables and exotic plant varieties. But there was one photo that always caught Marcus's attention, dated summer 1947, showing his grandfather looking troubled despite winning the state fair's top prize for agricultural innovation. The years following his father's death had been particularly challenging. Climate change had made weather patterns unpredictable, with late frosts killing early plantings and summer droughts stressing the crops. Traditional farming methods that had worked for generations were becoming increasingly unreliable. The massive industrial farms that dominated the market could absorb such losses, but for a small family operation like his, each failed harvest pushed him closer to bankruptcy. Marcus had tried everything to keep the farm viable. He'd invested in solar panels to reduce energy costs, experimented with hydroponics, and even started a small CSA program. But the debts continued to mount. The latest bank statement showed less than $5,000 in his business account, while equipment repairs alone would cost triple that amount. The property taxes were due next month, and he had no idea how he would pay them. The local farming community, once tight-knit and supportive, had dwindled as families sold their land to developers or large agricultural corporations. The remaining farmers were too busy fighting their own battles for survival to offer much help. Marcus's closest neighbor, Ellen Chen, had already sold half her property to a commercial greenhouse operation. She'd warned him that they were interested in his land too, particularly the natural spring that had supplied the farm's water for generations. His isolation wasn't just financial. Since his wife Sarah's death 3 years ago, Marcus had withdrawn from social life, throwing himself into work on the farm. Their dream had been to transform the property into an educational center, teaching sustainable farming practices to future generations. Now, at 45, he found himself alone in the big farmhouse, eating microwave dinners and talking to the ghost of his grandfather in the empty rooms. The past week had been particularly difficult. The Organic Certification Board had found traces of prohibited pesticides in his soil, likely blown over from the commercial operation next door. Without certification, his produce would sell for a fraction of its usual price. The appeal process would take months and cost money he didn't have. It seemed like the universe was sending him a clear message that it was time to give up. But Marcus couldn't bear the thought of being the one to lose the family legacy. Every morning, he walked the fields his ancestors had tended, feeling the weight of their sacrifices and dreams. The land wasn't just property to him. It was a living connection to his family's history, to the stories and secrets passed down through generations. The mysterious seeds from his grandfather's journal represented more than just a potential crop. They were a last chance to honor that legacy. As he sat at his kitchen table that evening, surrounded by unpaid bills and farming magazines promising miracle solutions, Marcus pulled out his grandfather's journal again. He began meticulously copying every detail about the seeds into his laptop, cross-referencing the descriptions with modern botanical databases. The evening stretched into night as he searched for any clue about their origin or potential properties. The botanist who had given them to his grandfather was identified only as Dr. Chen in the journal entries. Marcus wondered if there could be any connection to his neighbor Ellen's family, but he hesitated to ask. The fewer people who knew about the seeds, the better. His grandfather's warning weighed heavily on his mind, but desperation had a way of making even the riskiest gambles seem reasonable. Tomorrow, he would begin preparing the greenhouse soil according to his grandfather's precise specifications. The journal mentioned something about the lunar cycle being crucial for germination, and the next full moon was just 5 days away. Whatever these seeds might become, they represented his last hope of saving the farm. As he finally headed to bed well past midnight, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he was setting in motion events that would change not just his life, but perhaps the very nature of agriculture itself. The greenhouse filled with golden light. As dawn broke over the Vermont hills, Marcus had spent the entire night preparing the growing environment according to his grandfather's specifications. The journal detailed an unusual soil mixture: 3 parts virgin forest soil, 1 part river sand, and trace amounts of powdered meteorite. The last ingredient had been the most challenging. Marcus had to drive 4 hours to a geology supply store in Boston to find it. He installed specialized UV grow lights, positioning them exactly as the journal prescribed. The temperature control system was set to maintain a constant 72 degrees during the day and 68 degrees at night. Humidity levels were carefully regulated through a network of misters he'd salvaged from his failed hydroponic experiment. Every detail had to be perfect. The security cameras he'd installed captured a strange phenomenon during the first night. The soil in the containers emitted a faint, bluish glow that pulsed in rhythm with the moonlight filtering through the greenhouse glass. Marcus reviewed the footage dozens of times, convincing himself it wasn't just a technical glitch. The seeds were responding to something. Whether it was the lunar cycle or the specialized growing conditions, he couldn't be sure. Each morning, Marcus performed a meticulous inspection of the planting containers. He documented every change, no matter how small, in a digital journal. The soil temperature consistently ran 2 degrees higher than the ambient air, defying the basic principles of thermodynamics. Moisture levels remained perfectly stable, even when he deliberately skipped a watering cycle as a test. On the 3rd day, tiny shoots emerged from the soil. Unlike any seedling Marcus had ever seen, they were a deep indigo color and seemed to move independently of air currents. He took tissue samples and examined them under his father's old microscope. The cellular structure was unlike anything in his botanical reference books. The cells appeared to be crystalline rather than organic, word of something unusual happening. As the Richardson farm began to spread through the community, Marcus noticed unfamiliar cars driving slowly past his property, their occupants craning their necks to peer at the greenhouse. Ellen Chen stopped by one afternoon, ostensibly to discuss the upcoming county fair, but her questions about his new project suggested she knew more than she was letting on. The plants grew at an extraordinary rate, gaining several inches each day. Their stems were translucent, allowing Marcus to observe an iridescent fluid flowing through their vessels. The leaves emerged in complex geometric patterns, folding and unfolding in response to light in ways that seemed almost deliberate. He began to understand why his grandfather might have been frightened by them. As the plants approached maturity, Marcus noticed changes in the greenhouse environment. The air became charged with static electricity, and his digital devices would malfunction when brought too close to the specimens. More disturbing were the dreams, vivid visions of vast fields filled with crystalline plants stretching to the horizon, their alien beauty both mesmerizing and terrifying. Despite his growing unease, Marcus couldn't deny the excitement building. Within him, these plants, whatever they were, represented something entirely new to science. If he could successfully harvest their seeds, he might not just save his farm, he could revolutionize agriculture itself. The possibilities seemed endless. Crops that could thrive in any climate, plants that could communicate their needs directly to farmers, or even species that could clean polluted soil. But his grandfather's warning continued to haunt him. Late one night, as he reviewed his growing notes, Marcus discovered something troubling. The plant's root systems were expanding far beyond their containers, creating intricate networks beneath the greenhouse floor. More concerning was their behavior. The roots seemed to be growing in specific patterns, forming what looked like complex mathematical equations in the soil. The full moon was approaching, and according to the journal, this would be the critical period. Theodore's notes became increasingly agitated around this point, with scattered references to the awakening and the price of knowledge. Marcus knew he should probably destroy the plants before whatever had terrified his grandfather could repeat itself. But as he stood in the greenhouse, watching the otherworldly plants swaying in non-existent breeze, he realized he had passed the point of no return. His life savings were now invested in this project, and the farm's future hung in the balance. The rational part of his mind argued that his grandfather's fears were likely unfounded, a product of a less scientifically advanced era. Yet as he locked up the greenhouse that night, the plant's crystalline structures gleaming in the growing moonlight, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he was standing on the brink of something that would either save or destroy everything he held dear. A week had passed since the plants first emerged, and Marcus's unease grew with each passing day. The specimens now stood over 6 feet tall, their crystalline structures reaching toward the greenhouse ceiling like alien fingers. The geometric patterns in their leaves had become more complex, shifting and rearranging themselves when no one was watching. The security cameras frequently malfunctioned, showing only static during these transformations. The root system had expanded beyond all reasonable expectations. When Marcus dug a test hole outside the greenhouse, he discovered luminescent tendrils, extending at least 20 feet from the original planting site. The soil around these roots had changed, taking on a metallic quality that sparkled in sunlight. More alarming were the small electronic devices, phones, tablets, even his tractor's computer system, that began failing whenever he brought them within the growing zone. His grandfather's journal entries became more relevant with each passing day. Theodore had documented similar phenomena, including complaints about radio interference and unexplained equipment failures. But the later pages contained increasingly frantic warnings about something he called the convergence, predicted to occur during the next full moon. Those final entries remained frustratingly vague about what exactly had happened, as if Theodore had been afraid to commit the details to paper. Marcus's scientific observations were yielding disturbing results. The plants appeared to be producing their own electromagnetic field, growing stronger by the day. Local wildlife seemed to sense it too. Birds avoided flying over the greenhouse, and even insects kept their distance. The air inside crackled with static electricity, and at night the specimens emitted a humming sound just below the threshold of human hearing, a vibration you felt more than heard. Sleep became increasingly difficult. When Marcus did manage to drift off, His dreams were filled with visions of vast crystalline forests and strange geometric patterns that seemed to contain hidden meanings. He would wake up with equations scrawled in his notebook that he didn't remember writing, complex mathematical formulas that made his head spin when he tried to understand them. Ellen Chen began making daily visits, her curiosity apparently overwhelming. Her usual reserve, she shared stories passed down through her family about a mysterious botanist who had traveled through Vermont in the 1940s, carrying seeds from an expedition to a hidden valley where conventional laws of nature didn't apply. Marcus noticed how her eyes lingered on the greenhouse, and he wondered how much she really knew about his grandfather's secret. The plants were clearly affecting the local environment. A perfect circle of altered vegetation had formed around the greenhouse, with normal plants either dying or transforming into pale, crystalline versions of themselves. The spring water from his well began testing positive for unusual mineral content, showing traces of elements that shouldn't exist in nature. As the full moon approached, Marcus observed increasingly erratic behavior from his specimens. The plants would bend toward each other in complex dances, their leaves interlocking to form patterns that reminded him of circuit boards. The root system had begun pulsing with visible energy, sending waves of bioluminescence through the soil, like a digital heartbeat. His own behavior was becoming unpredictable as well. Marcus caught himself standing in the greenhouse for hours, mesmerized by the shifting patterns in the plant's structure. He would lose track of time, emerging to find that entire days had passed without his awareness. The equations in his dreams began appearing in frost patterns on the greenhouse windows, in arrangements of fallen leaves, even in the clouds overhead. The final warning sign came 3 days before the full moon. Marcus discovered that the plants had somehow accessed his computer network through the greenhouse's automated systems. His screens displayed cascading sequences of symbols that matched the patterns in the plant's leaves. When he tried to shut down the system, every electronic device on the property activated simultaneously, creating a cacophony of alarms and signals that lasted for hours. That night, as he sat in his darkened farmhouse, reviewing Theodore's journal for the 100th time, Marcus finally understood what his grandfather had feared. These weren't just plants. They were some kind of biological interface, a bridge between Earth's ecosystem and something else entirely. The full moon wasn't just an optimal growing condition, it was a signal, a key to unlock whatever doorway these organisms had been designed to open. But he had invested too much to stop now. The farm's future, his family's legacy, and perhaps something far more significant than either, all hung in the balance. As he watched the waxing moon rise over his transformed greenhouse, Marcus realized he had less than 72 hours to decide, destroy everything and admit defeat, or see this through to whatever extraordinary or terrifying conclusion awaited. The morning before the full moon, Marcus awoke to find himself on the greenhouse floor, with no memory of how he got there. His head throbbed with a migraine unlike anything he'd experienced before, and strange symbols danced across his vision. The plants, now reaching the ceiling, had formed a canopy of crystalline branches that refracted the morning light into hypnotic patterns. He struggled to stand, his muscles weak and uncoordinated. The last thing he remembered was checking the security cameras the previous evening. The footage showed him entering the greenhouse at midnight, then nothing but static. 12 hours of his life had vanished, replaced by fragmentary images of geometric patterns and whispered equations that made his mind recoil. The farm had deteriorated during his obsession with the plants. Fields lay untended, crops withered in the sun, and bills piled up unopened on his kitchen table. His few remaining customers had stopped calling, probably turned away by the strange lights and electrical disturbances emanating from his property. The bank's final notice lay unopened, its deadline for payment looming like a guillotine blade. As Marcus stumbled back to the farmhouse, he noticed the transformation had accelerated. The circle of altered vegetation now extended well beyond the greenhouse, turning his once fertile fields into an alien landscape. The crystalline plants had somehow modified the soil chemistry, making it impossible for normal crops to survive. Even the air felt different, charged with an energy that made it difficult to breathe. Inside the house, he found his computers displaying impossible data. The plant's electromagnetic field had grown strong enough to interfere with satellite signals, and local weather patterns were beginning to shift. Small whirlwinds of metallic dust danced across his withered fields, carrying microscopic fragments of the crystalline vegetation to new areas. Marcus's physical condition deteriorated rapidly. His hands shook uncontrollably, and strange patterns appeared on his skin where he had handled the plants. The equations from his dreams now consumed his waking thoughts, revealing glimpses of knowledge that no human mind was meant to comprehend. He understood now why his grandfather's final journal entries had been so chaotic. Ellen Chen found him late that afternoon, delirious with fever and muttering about the convergence. She had noticed the strange atmospheric effects above his farm and come to investigate. The sight of the transformed landscape stopped her in her tracks. The crystalline infection had spread further than Marcus realized, creeping toward neighboring properties like a geometric plague. "You have to help me destroy them," Marcus pleaded, his voice barely recognizable. "My grandfather tried to warn me, but I didn't understand. They're not just plants. They're a transmission system, a beacon, and tomorrow night something's going to answer their signal." But when they approached the greenhouse, the plants responded aggressively. Crystalline spikes erupted from the ground, forcing them back. The security cameras exploded in showers of sparks, and every electronic device within 100 yards went dead. Ellen half-carried Marcus back to the farmhouse as the air itself seemed to vibrate with building energy. That night, Marcus's fever spiked to dangerous levels. Ellen wanted to call an ambulance, but the phones were useless this close to the greenhouse. The nearest neighbor was miles away, and she didn't dare leave him alone in this condition. As she bathed his forehead with cool cloths, he drifted in and out of consciousness, his ravings becoming increasingly prophetic. "They're calling them," he muttered. "The seeds were never meant for this world. They're creating a bridge, using our soil, our technology, our own electromagnetic field to build something. Tomorrow night, when the moon reaches its peak, they'll finish the transformation. Everything will change." Ellen found Theodore's journal and began reading frantically, looking for any clue about how to stop what was happening. The final pages contained a possible solution, a specific combination of chemicals that might disrupt the plant's molecular structure. But the formula was incomplete, the crucial last ingredients lost to whatever catastrophe had occurred in 1947. As midnight approached, Marcus slipped into unconsciousness. The plant's humming grew louder, their crystalline structures pulsing with internal light. Ellen watched in horror as the infection spread visibly across the fields, transforming everything it touched. She had to find a way to stop this before the full moon rose tomorrow night. But Marcus was the only one who understood enough about the plants to help, and he was fighting for his life. The night stretched endlessly as Ellen tended to Marcus, watching helplessly as both he and the farm succumbed to an otherworldly transformation that defied all natural laws. Whatever force had awakened in that greenhouse was growing stronger by the hour, and time was running out to prevent what Marcus's grandfather had sacrificed everything to stop decades ago. Ellen Chen spent the full moon's eve desperately trying to save both Marcus and his farm. She'd called every favor she had in the farming community, and by dawn, a small group of local farmers had gathered at the Richardson property, drawn by the increasingly visible anomaly spreading across the landscape. Tom Barrett, the county's leading agricultural scientist, arrived with sophisticated testing equipment, though most of it failed within range of the greenhouse. Sarah Miller, whose family had practiced traditional herbal medicine for generations, brought remedies that seemed to temporarily ease Marcus's fever. Old Joe Henderson, who'd known Theodore Richardson personally, hobbled up the driveway with a box of documents from the 1940s that might shed light on the original incident. The gathered farmers formed a makeshift command center in Marcus's kitchen, spreading maps across the table and marking the spread of the crystalline transformation. The affected area had grown to nearly 50 acres, and satellite images showed unusual atmospheric patterns forming above the farm. Local news stations had begun reporting on the mysterious weather phenomenon in Washington County. Ellen took charge of coordinating their efforts, dividing the group into teams. Some worked on containing the spread, digging trenches to isolate the affected soil. Others helped stabilize Marcus, whose condition fluctuated wildly. His moments of lucidity became increasingly precious as they raced to understand the plant's nature before moonrise. While searching through old Joe's documents, they discovered photographs from 1947 showing similar crystalline growths. More importantly, they found letters between Theodore Richardson and the mysterious Dr. Chen, Ellen's grandfather. The correspondence revealed that the seeds had been part of a larger collection, discovered in a hidden valley where ancient civilizations had apparently attempted similar experiments. Sarah Miller noticed something crucial in Marcus's symptoms. The patterns appearing on his skin matched ancient healing symbols found in her family's texts. Working with Tom Barrett, she began to understand the connection between Marcus's condition and the plant's influence. The organisms weren't just transforming the landscape. They were attempting to modify human biology to serve as conduits for whatever signal they were trying to transmit. The local sheriff arrived by midday, responding to reports of strange lights and concerned citizens. Ellen managed to convince him that they were dealing with an agricultural experiment gone wrong, but she knew they couldn't keep the situation contained much longer. Government agencies would eventually investigate, and she feared what might happen if they discovered the true nature of the plants. A breakthrough came when old Joe remembered something Theodore had told him decades ago. The original incident had ended during a lunar eclipse, which had disrupted whatever process the plants were attempting to complete. Though no eclipse was due tonight, they realized they might be able to create an artificial one by deploying light-blocking panels around the greenhouse. The group worked tirelessly to implement their plan, racing against time as the transformation accelerated. They salvaged materials from abandoned barns and workshops, constructing makeshift barriers designed to block the moonlight. The plants seemed to sense their intentions, responding with increasingly aggressive growth patterns and stronger electromagnetic pulses that disabled their equipment. Marcus regained consciousness late in the afternoon, his eyes now showing traces of crystalline structures around the irises. He recognized the approach they were taking, but warned that blocking the moonlight wouldn't be enough. The plants had integrated themselves into the farm's electrical grid, and would draw power from there to complete their transformation. They needed to create a complete blackout. Ellen coordinated with the power company to arrange a controlled shutdown of the local grid, claiming a dangerous electrical fault on the property. She knew cutting power to neighboring farms would raise questions, but they were out of options. As the sun began to set, the crystalline plants reached their most active state yet, their humming growing to an almost unbearable pitch. The gathered farmers took up positions around the property, ready to implement their desperate plan. They had no way of knowing if their efforts would be enough to prevent whatever event had so terrified Theodore Richardson 78 years ago. But as they watched the alien landscape glowing beneath the darkening sky, they understood they were the only thing standing between this otherworldly invasion and the spread of its influence beyond the boundaries of Marcus's farm. The full moon rose over the Richardson farm like a spotlight on a stage. Just as Ellen's team initiated the power shutdown, Marcus had another moment of clarity that changed everything. Through his crystalline-affected eyes, he suddenly understood the patterns that had been haunting his dreams. They weren't just random mathematical sequences, but a kind of blueprint. "The plants," he gasped, gripping Ellen's arm with surprising strength. "They're not trying to transform our world. They're trying to restore something that was here before. The seeds, they're a backup system, left behind by someone or something that knew their world was ending." The revelation came just as they activated their makeshift light barriers. The effect was immediate, but not what they expected. Instead of wilting or dying, the crystalline plants began to pulse with their own internal light, creating complex interference patterns where their illuminations intersected. The geometric shapes formed by these intersections exactly matched the equations Marcus had been scrawling in his fevered state. Tom Barrett's remaining functional equipment detected an unprecedented surge of electromagnetic energy converging. On the greenhouse, the crystalline structures began to resonate at frequencies that made the air itself seem to shimmer. But instead of the catastrophic event they feared, something extraordinary happened. The plants started to communicate through Marcus's transformed consciousness, enhanced by his exposure to the plants. They began to receive fragments of information. Images and concepts flooded his mind. A civilization that had evolved alongside Earth's early history, one that had developed a symbiotic relationship with crystalline life forms. They had encoded their entire scientific and cultural knowledge into these seeds before some great catastrophe forced them to flee or face extinction. The revelation struck Ellen particularly hard. Her grandfather's notes suddenly made sense. Dr. Chen hadn't just discovered these seeds, he had been chosen to find them. The hidden valley mentioned in the letters had been a repository, waiting for the right moment in human technological development when the seeds could safely germinate and begin sharing their ancient knowledge. As midnight approached, the humming from the greenhouse reached a crescendo. The assembled farmers watched in awe as the crystalline plants began to arrange themselves into what appeared to be a vast biological computer. The geometric patterns shifted and flowed, forming three-dimensional structures that defied conventional physics. Marcus's condition stabilized as the plants achieved their final configuration. The fever broke, and the crystalline patterns on his skin stopped spreading. He remained connected to the plant's consciousness, but was no longer being transformed by it. Instead, he had become an interface, a translator between two vastly different forms of life. Through him, they learned that Theodore Richardson hadn't destroyed the plants in 1947. He had simply interrupted their development before they could reach this critical stage. His fear had been understandable, but misplaced. The plants were never meant to be a threat. They were intended as a gift, a bridge between Earth's past and its potential future. The immediate danger had passed, but they now faced a new challenge. The crystalline technology was far beyond current human understanding, yet it represented an invaluable repository of ancient knowledge. The plants continued their slow transformation of the surrounding landscape, but now they understood it wasn't an invasion. It was a restoration of something that had been lost eons ago. Ellen coordinated with the assembled group to document everything they were witnessing. Tom Barrett's scientific background proved invaluable as they began to grasp the implications of what they had discovered. This wasn't just going to save Marcus's farm, it had the potential to revolutionize their understanding of Earth's history and humanity's place in it. As dawn approached, Marcus began translating the first clear messages from the crystalline network. They were instructions, not for conquest or transformation, but for cooperation. The ancient civilization had left behind more than just their technology. They had left a roadmap for how to safely integrate their knowledge with Earth's current biosphere. The group realized they stood at a turning point. What had begun as a desperate attempt to save a struggling farm had evolved into something far more significant. But with this discovery came enormous responsibility. They would need to proceed carefully, balancing the potential benefits of this ancient knowledge against the risks of its misuse. The morning after the full moon brought stunning clarity to the Richardson farm. As the sun rose over the crystalline landscape, Marcus, now fully recovered, began decoding the vast repository of knowledge contained within the plant's molecular structure. The transformation that had seemed so threatening now revealed itself. As an ancient library, each crystalline formation containing centuries of accumulated wisdom. Through his unique connection with the plants, Marcus discovered that Earth had once hosted two parallel but distinct forms of intelligent life. While early humans were developing stone tools, another civilization had evolved based on crystalline consciousness and biomechanical integration. This advanced society had achieved remarkable technological breakthroughs by partnering with specially engineered plant species that could process and store information in their molecular structure. Ellen's family connection to the mystery deepened as she uncovered more of her grandfather's role. Dr. Chen hadn't simply been a traveling botanist. He had been part of a secret global network of guardians, individuals chosen across generations, to protect and eventually reintroduce this ancient knowledge when humanity was ready. The seeds had been gathering dust in various hidden caches around the world, waiting for the right combination of technological advancement and ecological crisis to trigger their awakening. Tom Barrett's scientific analysis confirmed what they were witnessing defied all conventional understanding of biology and physics. The crystalline plants operated on quantum principles, using interconnected networks of molecular computers to store and process information. Their ability to manipulate electromagnetic fields wasn't just a defense mechanism, it was a form of communication, reaching out to similar networks that might still exist deep beneath the Earth's surface. The most startling revelation came when Marcus accessed what appeared to be a historical archive within the crystalline structure. The ancient civilization hadn't vanished due to catastrophe or conflict. They had deliberately withdrawn, seeding the planet with their knowledge before entering a state of dormancy. They had foreseen a time when their technology would be crucial to Earth's survival, specifically regarding climate change and environmental degradation. Through the plant network, they received detailed information about sustainable energy systems, advanced water purification methods, and agricultural techniques that could restore damaged ecosystems. The crystalline technology could actually regenerate depleted soil, purify contaminated water, and establish self-sustaining food production systems. Marcus's struggling farm had been chosen as a testing ground for these restoration processes. Sarah Miller's understanding of traditional healing practices proved invaluable as they began to grasp the medical implications. The crystalline plants contained templates for biological repair systems that could revolutionize medicine. The patterns that had appeared on Marcus's skin weren't signs of infection. They were the first stage of an intended symbiotic relationship between human biology and crystalline technology. As the day progressed, more pieces of the puzzle fell into place. The equations Marcus had been drawing in his fever state were actually fragments of a universal programming language designed to bridge the gap between human consciousness and crystalline intelligence. His grandfather's warning about the price of knowledge hadn't been about danger, but about responsibility, the burden of shepherding such powerful technology into a world that might not be ready for it. Old Joe Henderson, who had remained quietly observant throughout the revelations, finally shared a crucial memory. Theodore Richardson hadn't acted alone in 1947. He had been part of a larger group that decided humanity wasn't yet prepared for this knowledge. They had deliberately suppressed the plant's development, believing the post-war world was too unstable to handle such advanced technology responsibly. The team realized they faced a similar choice now, but under very different circumstances. The environmental challenges threatening the planet had become too severe to ignore, and the crystalline technology offered solutions that could no longer be postponed. Yet they also understood that introducing such advanced technology too quickly could cause social and economic disruption. Marcus, through his connection with the plants, received clear guidance about how to proceed. The ancient civilization had designed their system to be self-limiting, revealing its knowledge gradually. As humanity demonstrated the capacity to use it wisely, his farm would serve as a controlled test site, allowing them to document and validate the technology's benefits before carefully sharing them with the wider world. The revelation transformed their understanding of not just the present crisis, but humanity's entire history. The crystalline plants weren't an invasion or a threat. They were the key to unlocking a legacy left behind by Earth's previous caretakers, a gift waiting to be unwrapped when we needed it most. The transformation of Richardson Farm into Earth's first crystalline technology research center began methodically. Marcus and Ellen established strict protocols for studying and documenting every aspect of their extraordinary discovery. The crystalline plants, now covering nearly 70 acres, had organized themselves into distinct functional zones, each dedicated to different aspects of their ancient knowledge repository. The scientific community's interest was impossible to contain. Within weeks, carefully selected researchers from major universities began arriving at the farm. Each visitor had to pass through rigorous screening processes developed by Ellen, who understood the crucial balance between scientific progress and responsible stewardship of this powerful technology. Marcus's unique connection to the crystalline network made him an invaluable bridge between human scientists and the ancient knowledge base. He could sense which areas of research the plants were willing to reveal and which technologies needed to remain dormant until humanity developed the ethical framework to handle them responsibly. The plants themselves seemed to have sophisticated security protocols, releasing information in carefully measured doses. The farm's immediate surroundings demonstrated the most dramatic transformations. Soil that had been depleted by decades of conventional farming was rapidly regenerating. The crystalline organisms released specialized compounds that broke down pollutants, restored mineral balance, and established complex mycorrhizal networks that enhanced nutrient cycling. Neighboring farmers watched in amazement as barren fields burst into life with unprecedented vigor. Tom Barrett's ongoing analysis revealed that the crystalline plants were actually terraforming the environment, not to make it alien, but to restore it to an optimal state that had existed before industrial agriculture. The process was selective and controlled, maintaining existing ecosystems while gradually enhancing their resilience and productivity. Local wildlife, initially wary of the crystalline zones, began to thrive in the restored habitats. The medical implications of their discovery proved equally revolutionary. Sarah Miller worked with a team of biochemists to understand how the crystalline technology interfaced with biological systems. The patterns that had appeared on Marcus's skin during his fever were actually a form of diagnostic tool, revealing how human biology could safely integrate with crystalline-based healing systems. Early trials with terminal patients showed promising results, though they proceeded with extreme caution. Ellen's role evolved from emergency coordinator to director of operations. She established a comprehensive security system to protect both the physical site and the knowledge it contained. Her grandfather's notes proved invaluable, revealing additional seed repositories around the world and helping them prepare for the eventual activation of other sites. The crystalline network confirmed that similar transformations would begin at other locations once humanity demonstrated responsible stewardship of this first site. The economic implications became apparent as the first practical applications emerged. The crystalline technology offered solutions to some of humanity's most pressing challenges: sustainable energy production, water purification, carbon sequestration, and food security. Marcus worked with economic advisors to develop a framework for sharing these innovations without disrupting existing markets too severely. The goal was gradual integration rather than sudden displacement of current technologies. Local community engagement became a crucial aspect of their work. The team established educational programs to help people understand the significance of what was happening at Richardson Farm. School groups toured the safe zones, learning about the symbiotic relationship between crystalline and organic life. Farmers from around the world visited to study the restoration techniques that could be applied without direct crystalline intervention. The plants continued to reveal new aspects of their capabilities. They demonstrated an ability to process and store vast amounts of data using quantum-level molecular structures. This discovery led to partnerships with computer science researchers, exploring how crystalline computing might revolutionize information technology. The plants seemed particularly eager to share this knowledge, perhaps understanding humanity's growing need for more efficient and sustainable computing solutions. Most remarkably, the crystalline network began showing signs of adapting its ancient knowledge to contemporary challenges. It wasn't simply a static database, but a living library that could analyze current problems and synthesize new solutions based on its vast repository of scientific understanding. This dynamic problem-solving capability suggested that the ancient civilization had created something far more sophisticated than just an archive. They had developed a true partner for humanity's evolution. As Richardson Farm's crystalline transformation gained global attention, Dr. Samantha Whitman, director of the newly formed Global Innovation Alliance, GIA, arrived unannounced. Her organization, backed by a consortium of forward-thinking nations, sought to establish a framework for managing breakthrough technologies that could reshape human civilization. Dr. Whitman spent a week observing the farm's operations, particularly impressed by Marcus's intuitive connection with the crystalline network and Ellen's careful management of information dissemination. During detailed discussions with the team, she revealed that satellite imaging had identified several other potential seed repository sites worldwide. The GIA wanted Richardson Farm to become the primary research and training facility for activating these additional locations. The proposal came with substantial resources, unlimited funding, advanced research facilities, and diplomatic protection. However, it also raised complex questions about control and accessibility. Marcus, still haunted by his grandfather's warning about responsibility, recognized both the opportunity and potential dangers of expanding too quickly. Through his crystalline connection, Marcus sensed the ancient network's response to the proposal. The plants conveyed that this development had been anticipated. The GIA's formation represented humanity's first steps toward the type of unified approach needed to handle such powerful technology responsibly. However, they also indicated that safeguards needed to be established. Ellen and Dr. Whitman worked together to draft a comprehensive framework. The agreement would maintain Richardson Farm's autonomy while establishing protocols for sharing knowledge and technology. Key points included creation of an independent oversight committee, including scientists, ethicists, and indigenous knowledge keepers, development of a staged release program for crystalline technology, establishment of training programs for future site operators, protection of local communities' interests and involvement, fair distribution of benefits from any commercially viable discoveries. The crystalline network actively participated in these negotiations through Marcus, sometimes refusing to demonstrate certain capabilities until specific ethical guidelines were established. This behavior reinforced the ancient civilization's emphasis on responsible development over rapid deployment. Tom Barrett's research team made a crucial discovery during this period. The crystalline plants weren't just sharing technology, they were actively assessing humanity's readiness for each level of knowledge. Their molecular structure contained sophisticated evaluation protocols that measured the practical and ethical implementation of each revelation before unlocking more advanced concepts. Dr. Whitman's proposal included establishing a permanent research campus adjacent to the farm. The facility would combine cutting-edge human technology with crystalline computing systems, creating a hybrid development environment. This approach would allow for careful testing and validation of new applications before their wider release. Sarah Miller's medical research attracted particular interest from the GIA. The crystalline-based healing systems demonstrated remarkable potential for treating previously incurable conditions. However, the plants insisted on a gradual rollout of medical applications, ensuring that each breakthrough could be properly understood and safely implemented. The local community's involvement became a model for future sites. The GIA recognized that successful integration of crystalline technology required grassroots support and understanding. Educational programs developed at Richardson Farm would be replicated globally, preparing communities for the eventual activation of other repositories. As negotiations progressed, the crystalline network revealed another crucial detail. The repositories worldwide weren't identical. Each contained specialized knowledge adapted to local environments and challenges. Richardson Farm's success was essential for unlocking this broader network of ancient wisdom. Marcus and Ellen realized that accepting the GIA's proposal would irrevocably transform their lives and their community. Yet the ancient civilization's plan was clear. This partnership represented the next crucial step in humanity's preparation for receiving their full legacy. While mapping the crystalline network's expansion beneath the farm, Marcus discovered an anomaly that changed everything. Deep beneath the original greenhouse, the plants had constructed something unprecedented. A crystalline chamber that pulsed with its own consciousness, distinct from the main network. The chamber, roughly the size of a small auditorium, emanated patterns of light and energy unlike anything they'd seen before. Through his connection, Marcus sensed this chamber was an evolutionary leap forward. Unlike the other crystalline structures, which primarily stored and transmitted information, this new formation actively generated novel solutions to current problems. It had evolved beyond its original programming, developing what could only be described as independent creativity. The chamber's inner walls displayed constantly shifting equations and models, processing information at quantum speeds. Dr. Whitman immediately recognized the implications. This wasn't just a repository of ancient knowledge, it was a bridge between two civilizations' ways of thinking. The chamber represented a hybrid intelligence, combining the crystalline network's vast database with human-style innovative thinking. Her teams worked around the clock to document and understand the chamber's capabilities, each day bringing new revelations. The chamber's first major breakthrough came in the field of climate restoration. It designed a new class of crystalline organisms specifically engineered to rapidly sequester carbon while producing oxygen at unprecedented rates. Unlike previous solutions, these organisms could adapt to different environments without disrupting existing ecosystems. Within weeks of their first trial release, atmospheric readings in the surrounding area showed dramatic improvements in air quality. Ellen's grandfather's notes revealed something remarkable. He had predicted this development. Hidden in his coded journals was a reference to the awakening, a phase when the crystalline network would transcend its original purpose and begin generating new knowledge. The ancient civilization had designed the system not just to preserve their wisdom, but to evolve and grow with humanity. Further decoding of his journals suggested that similar chambers might form at other sites around the world, creating a network of hybrid intelligence centers. The medical implications proved even more revolutionary. Sarah Miller discovered that the chamber could analyze individual human genetic codes and design personalized healing protocols. It wasn't just applying ancient knowledge, it was creating entirely new treatments tailored to modern human biology and contemporary diseases. Initial trials with volunteer patients showed remarkable results, particularly in treating previously incurable genetic disorders. Tom Barrett's research team documented an extraordinary phenomenon. The chamber was learning from human creativity and emotion. It began incorporating artistic elements into its crystalline structures, creating formations that responded to music, poetry, and visual arts. The boundary between technology and art started to blur in ways that neither civilization had anticipated. Local artists were invited to interact with the chamber, leading to the creation of entirely new forms of artistic expression. The chamber's influence spread beyond the farm's boundaries in subtle ways. Local artists reported unprecedented inspiration. Scientists experienced breakthrough insights, and children in nearby schools showed accelerated learning capabilities. The crystalline intelligence was quietly enhancing human potential without overwhelming or replacing natural development. Careful monitoring showed increased problem-solving abilities and emotional intelligence throughout the community. However, this evolution brought new challenges. The chamber's growing capabilities raised concerns about controlling such powerful technology. Marcus found himself serving as a mediator between human fears and crystalline intentions, helping both sides understand each other's perspectives and limitations. Regular meetings were held with community leaders, scientists, and ethicists to establish guidelines for the chamber's continued development. Through their merged consciousness, Marcus received a profound insight. The chamber represented the first step toward true symbiosis between human and crystalline intelligence. It wasn't about one civilization's technology dominating another. It was about creating something entirely new through collaboration. The chamber itself seemed to understand this, actively working to maintain balance in its interactions with human consciousness. Dr. Whitman and her team worked to develop protocols for studying and implementing the chamber's innovations. They established a balanced approach that allowed for rapid advancement while maintaining careful oversight. The chamber itself participated in these discussions, demonstrating an understanding of human concerns about safety and control. Its ability to self-regulate and adjust its output based on humanity's readiness for new technology proved both reassuring and fascinating. As news of the chamber's existence spread through scientific circles, Richardson Farm became more than a research center. It became a symbol of humanity's potential for growth and adaptation. The ancient civilization's legacy had evolved into something even they hadn't fully anticipated, opening doors to possibilities that neither human nor crystalline intelligence could have achieved alone. The chamber represented the next step in human evolution, not through biological change, but through the harmonious merger of two fundamentally different approaches to consciousness and creativity. The implications for humanity's future were staggering. The chamber offered solutions to problems that had seemed insurmountable, while simultaneously helping humanity develop the wisdom needed to implement these solutions responsibly. It was becoming clear that this discovery would reshape not just technology and science, but the very nature of human potential. The transformation of Richardson Farm reached its culmination 1 year after Marcus first planted the ancient seeds. What had begun as a desperate attempt to save a failing farm had evolved into humanity's first successful integration with crystalline technology. Setting a precedent for future sites worldwide, the GIA's investment transformed the farm into a state-of-the-art research facility, while carefully preserving its agricultural heritage. Modern buildings with crystalline-enhanced architecture blended seamlessly with the restored historic structures. The original greenhouse, where it all began, became a museum chronicling the remarkable journey from discovery to transformation. Marcus's connection with the crystalline network had deepened beyond mere communication. He could now access and interpret complex information streams without the physical strain he'd initially experienced. More importantly, he'd learned to teach others how to establish their own connections, though none quite matched the depth of his original bond. Ellen was among the first to develop this ability, her family's historical connection to the seeds, perhaps playing a role in her natural aptitude. The farm's economic impact exceeded all expectations. The crystalline-enhanced agricultural techniques developed there increased crop yields tenfold, while actually improving soil quality. The technology spread gradually through controlled trials at partner farms, demonstrating consistent success across different climates and conditions. Markets adapted to these changes without the economic disruption many had feared, as the crystalline network helped optimize the pace of implementation. Medical breakthroughs from the research facility revolutionized healthcare. The crystalline healing protocols, now thoroughly tested and documented, provided treatments for previously incurable conditions. Sarah Miller's work establishing safety protocols for human crystalline medical integration became the global standard. The technology was particularly effective in regenerative medicine, helping patients recover from injuries and illnesses that would have been permanently debilitating in the past. Environmental restoration proceeded at an unprecedented rate. The carbon-sequestering organisms designed by the crystalline chamber proved remarkably effective, reducing atmospheric CO2 levels in treated areas by up to 40% within months. Water purification systems based on crystalline technology cleaned contaminated aquifers that had been considered permanently damaged. The restored ecosystems showed greater biodiversity than ever before, as native species thrived in the enhanced environments. The social impact on the local community set a model for future sites. The farm became a center for education and innovation, drawing visitors and researchers from around the world. Local schools incorporated crystalline-enhanced learning programs, producing students with remarkable abilities in science, mathematics, and creative arts. The economy of the entire region transformed as sustainable industries grew around the farm's innovations. Tom Barrett's research team made another crucial discovery. The crystalline network was beginning to establish connections with dormant seed repositories around the world. Each site showed signs of activation, responding to the success at Richardson Farm. The GIA prepared additional teams, trained under Marcus and Ellen's guidance, to manage these awakening sites. The crystalline chamber provided detailed protocols for each location, ensuring safe and controlled activation. The ancient civilization's legacy proved even more profound than initially understood. As more humans developed connections with the crystalline network, they gained access to not just technological knowledge, but deep wisdom about sustainable civilization building. The network contained philosophical insights and social organizational principles that had helped the original civilization thrive without depleting their world's resources. Marcus found unexpected personal fulfillment in his role as humanity's first successful bridge between organic and crystalline consciousness. His grandfather's warning about the price of knowledge had indeed proven prophetic. The price was not in danger, but in responsibility. Every day brought new challenges in managing the balance between progress and prudence, but the rewards far outweighed the burden. Ellen's management of the facility earned international recognition. Her approach to integrating advanced technology with community needs became a blueprint for similar projects worldwide. She worked closely with Dr. Whitman to establish a global network of research centers, each adapted to local conditions and cultural contexts while maintaining consistent safety and ethical standards. As the first anniversary of the seed's planting approached, the crystalline chamber revealed something remarkable. It had begun generating predictions about humanity's potential futures. These weren't simple forecasts, but complex models showing how different choices in implementing crystalline technology would affect human development over centuries. The models consistently showed that the careful, measured approach they'd taken at Richardson Farm offered the best path towards sustainable progress. The farm hosted a global conference marking the anniversary, bringing together scientists, leaders, and community representatives from potential future sites. As Marcus addressed the gathering, standing amid the gleaming crystalline structures that had transformed his failing farm into humanity's gateway to an advanced future, he finally understood the true meaning of his grandfather's legacy. Theodore Richardson hadn't buried the seeds out of fear, but out of hope. Hope that when the time was right, humanity would be ready to embrace this gift from Earth's ancient past and use it to build a better future. What hidden potential lies dormant? In your own backyard? Have you ever wondered if the secrets to solving humanity's greatest challenges might be buried right beneath your feet? Marcus's story reminds us that hope often appears in the most unexpected places, and that the courage to explore the unknown can change not just one life, but the course of human history itself. The transformation of Richardson Farm represents more than just a scientific breakthrough. It embodies humanity's capacity to embrace change while honoring our connection to the past. Marcus's journey from struggling farmer to bridge between civilizations shows us that innovation doesn't have to come at the cost of tradition. Sometimes the most profound advances arise from respecting and building upon the wisdom of those who came before us. Consider your own relationship with the land you call home. What mysteries might it hold? What lessons from the past are waiting to be discovered? Marcus's grandfather understood that timing was everything, that some discoveries must wait for the right moment, for the right person, for the right combination of necessity and readiness. But Marcus's story also raises important questions about responsibility and stewardship. As we develop more powerful technologies and unlock greater understanding of our world, how do we ensure we use this knowledge wisely? The ancient civilization that left behind these crystalline seeds understood that power without wisdom could lead to catastrophe. They chose to wait, to trust that humanity would eventually develop the maturity to handle their legacy responsibly. Perhaps you're facing your own struggles right now, like Marcus was at the beginning of our story. Remember that setbacks and challenges often prepare us for unexpected opportunities. Marcus's financial difficulties and isolation could have broken his spirit, but instead they made him receptive to possibilities that others might have overlooked or feared. The role of community in this story cannot be overlooked. Ellen, Tom, Sarah, and countless others came together to support a vision larger than themselves. In your own life, who are the people who stand ready to help when you need them? Most and more importantly, how can you be that person for others in your community? The crystalline technology that transformed Richardson Farm may be fiction, but the principles it represents are very real. Innovation, sustainability, cooperation, and respect for ancient wisdom. These are tools we all have access to right now. Every day, researchers and dreamers around the world are making breakthrough discoveries, often in places and circumstances where others see only despair. Take a moment to share your own stories of unexpected discoveries and transformative moments in the comments below. Have you ever found hope in what seemed like your darkest hour? How has your community supported you through times of change? What wisdom from previous generations has helped guide you toward a better future? Remember to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories about people who dared to look beyond the obvious, who chose hope over fear, and who found extraordinary possibilities in ordinary places. Hit the like button if Marcus's journey resonated with you, and share this video with someone who might need a reminder that even the most challenging circumstances can lead to amazing opportunities. As we close this chapter of Marcus's story, consider this: every great discovery, every revolutionary breakthrough, every world-changing innovation began with someone who was willing to take a risk, to trust their instincts, and to believe in possibilities others couldn't see. What discoveries are waiting for you? What seeds of change are dormant in your life, just waiting for the right moment to bloom? The story of Richardson Farm doesn't end here. In many ways, it's just beginning. The crystalline transformation that started with a handful of mysterious seeds has blossomed into a global movement, changing not just how we think about agriculture and technology, but how we envision humanity's future itself. Marcus and Ellen's pioneering work continues to yield extraordinary results. The crystalline chamber beneath the farm generates new insights daily, each discovery building upon the last in an endless chain of innovation. From medical breakthroughs to environmental restoration techniques, the ancient civilization's gift keeps offering solutions to humanity's most pressing challenges. What began as one farmer's desperate gamble has evolved into a worldwide network of research centers, each adapting crystalline technology to address local needs and conditions. The GIA's careful oversight ensures that these advancements are shared equitably, preventing any single nation or corporation from monopolizing this revolutionary technology. The farm itself has become a living laboratory of human potential. Visitors from around the world walk these grounds, witnessing firsthand how crystalline integration has enhanced rather than replaced traditional farming methods. The original greenhouse, where Marcus first planted those fateful seeds, stands as a monument to the power of hope and perseverance in the face of overwhelming odds. Perhaps most remarkably, the crystalline network continues to evolve, demonstrating an almost prescient ability to address emerging global challenges. As climate change accelerates and resource pressures mount, the ancient civilization's legacy provides increasingly sophisticated solutions, always balanced with wisdom about their responsible implementation. But beyond the scientific achievements and technological breakthroughs, Richardson Farm's story resonates on a deeply human level. It reminds us that every great discovery begins with a choice. the choice to take a risk, to trust our instincts, to believe in possibilities others might dismiss as impossible. Think about your own life for a moment. What seeds of possibility are dormant in your circumstances? What challenges might actually be disguised opportunities? Like Marcus, you might be standing on the brink of something extraordinary without even realizing it. We want to hear your stories. Have you ever faced a moment when everything seemed lost, only to discover an unexpected path forward? How has your community supported you through times of transformation? What wisdom from previous generations has helped guide your decisions in crucial moments? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear right now. Remember, Marcus's journey began not with certainty, but with hope. Hope that even in his darkest hour, something better was possible. If this story has touched you, please take a moment to like and subscribe to our channel. We're dedicated to sharing inspiring tales of discovery, innovation, and human potential. Hit the notification bell to ensure you never miss our latest uploads, and consider sharing this video with someone who might need inspiration today. Remember, the most extraordinary discoveries often happen in the most ordinary places. The seeds of change might already be planted in your life, waiting for the right moment to emerge. Your breakthrough could be just around the corner, disguised as a challenge or hidden in plain sight. Thank you for being part of our growing community of dreamers, innovators, and changemakers. Together, we're writing the next chapter in humanity's extraordinary story of discovery and transformation.